we are going to be taking a look at how the two nations, how Africa and France can benefit from this visit of French President Emmanuel Macron. And so we've baptized the topic as Macron as a mason to rebuild French broken walls in Africa. Macron as a mason to rebuild French broken walls in Africa. And my guests are already with me in the studio, and together we are going to be taking a look at these developments. Emmanuel Macron, Apostle Ambe, is going to be coming to Africa next week. He will begin his trip by coming to Cameroon, and then he will move to Benin and then Guinea-Bissau. Thanks for joining us today on 90 Minutes in Africa.
Thank you, Elvis. Good afternoon, Africans, and welcome to today's edition of 90 Minutes in Africa. I am Apostle Ambe, as introduced by the host anchorman, Boh Elvis. We are glad to be here today to also give analysis on President Macron's visit to 3 African countries, respectively Cameroon, Benin, and Guinea-Bissau. Like I used to say, a frog does not run in the daylight for nothing. Either it is pursuing something or something is pursuing it. Macron is a prototype of that frog that has been visited by something bigger in its hole. Something is either pursuing it or is pursuing something. And I want to believe that President Macron's visit to Cameroon, Benin, and Guinea-Bissau is practically to defend French interests. As you can look at the topic, Macron is a mason to rebuild the already broken French empire walls in the continent of Africa. As we stay glued to your screen, we're going to be bringing you very, very important information. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Apostle Ambe, Valentine, Ngwa, Ndiwum, Emmanuel. Thank you so much for coming to participate in this program. We are going to be looking at African interests because, as I know, Macron will be here from the 25th in the African continent. He is coming to represent the interests of France, and of course in Africa we should be looking at the African interest.
Okay, thank you very much, Boh Elvis. Permit me to greet all the viewers of 90 Minutes in Africa all across the board in the world. I want to dedicate this special edition to all the African diaspora who are out there and still think that their contribution to make Africa a better place is their priority. I send special greetings to Madame Lumbi Mlambo, who is the matron of the New Era Youth for Africa. She's also the founder and the CEO of JB Dondolo, and she has been doing a lot. So she's a source of inspiration that most of us will have to admire. So a big shout out to all the African diaspora who have thought that they should put a path on our back to see Africa being transformed.
Thank you, and of course our other guests are already in the studio with us. I'm talking about Dr. John Ako, who is going to be looking at the legal aspect, and we have political analyst SIAKA Shuneh. They'll be joining us in about 2 minutes. They're already on ground, so they'll be coming to the studio in about 2 minutes. Apostle Ambe, Valentine, before we take a look at how we can defend our interests as Africans during this visit, and the people that are better placed to defend our interests as Africans are the various heads of state that will be having a tete-a-tete with President Emmanuel Macron. They are not going to be discussing on their behalf. They are going to be meeting Macron to talk on our behalf. So what is your advice to the 3 African presidents that will be talking with Macron? What advice can you give them and the advisors as they prepare for this trip, as they prepare for this arrival of the president?
Yes, Elvis, with all our anticipation, Cameroonians, Beninois, as well as Guineans from Guinea-Bissau precisely are expecting the arrival of President Macron in Africa in a few days from now, a few hours from now. He'll be landing in Cameroon, maybe say tomorrow or after tomorrow, a day after tomorrow. I think my counsel to Africans is French people have never, for once, had the interest of Africans. I will go back, drawing inspiration from Ferdinand Leopold's book, The Old Man and the Medal. When Mecca was to be given a medal, the French High Commissioner came and they dressed a table on a high stage and kept French personalities there, while Mecca was to receive the medal sat in the crowd. But the French commissioner's speech was that you are our friends. But they never drank in the same glass that they drank. They never sat on the same table that they sat. They were not given the same protocol and respect that they were given. And when the French commissioner left, the people of the village sat behind and began making mockery of the French commissioner and his cohorts, that they called us their friends, but they couldn't drink in the same glass with us. They couldn't sit on the same table with us. They could not intermeddle themselves with us, but they called us their friends. That is to let you understand that it is an age-long established truth that the French never came to Africa for the interests of Africans, and they have never been to Africa for the interests of Africans. They will never, I repeat, in the nearby future, be for the interests of Africans. President Macron stepping into the continent Africa is already a sign that something bigger than the cricket has visited the cricket. And I'm very convinced that there is a threat to so many things as far as the French Empire in Africa is concerned, considering the upheavals in Central African Republic, considering the challenges in Mali, Burkina Faso, and other countries. There is a sign that France is losing its grip over the continent Africa and over most African countries. And I think President Macron's visit to Africa, so sudden, is a sign that they are trying to come to correct the loopholes that the French government or French nation experiencing in Africa already. For instance, we can no longer count South Africa Republic as a French former colony because they don't have any grip over Central Africa. Mali is another. They have kicked out the French ambassador, kicked out the French army, kicked out RFE, as well as kicked out France 24. They are now drafting a new constitution and trying to create a new currency to go out of the France zone. That is to let you understand that the problem that is pursuing the French government is what is bringing Macron in Africa. The second issue has to do with every time you watch French presidents come to Africa is because they're coming to defend something very serious. The very first time we had devaluation in 1994 in this country was when the French president visited this country. Secondly, we had a meeting in Yaoundé with a group of diplomats. The Christine Lagarde, who is the president of IMF, came with the French foreign minister of finance. They sat in Yaoundé with a group of members of CEMAC and were talking about either regulating the budget of CEMAC zone or devaluating the currency. They arrived at regulating the budget of the CEMAC zone, and in 3 years' time, the COVID-19 came, and then everything got frustrated. Considering the situation right now, I want to believe that President Macron's visit to Africa is far beyond a political transition in Cameroon. It has to do with the devaluation of the CFA. And that is something very strategic, and it will hamper the economy of Cameroon. And if care is not taken, Cameroon may sink to a place of hyperinflation, considering the hike in prices of basic commodities as well as fuel. So the visit of President Macron in these 3 African countries is practically one, for economic reasons, to definitely devaluate again the CFA in order to give France a standard at the Eurozone. Now, also, considering the political transition in Cameroon, that is not something very serious that Macron can come to Cameroon. The ambassadors take care of those things. We saw the case of Omar Bongo in Gabon when he gave the son Ali Bongo leadership. We saw Idriss Déby in France. That's when Macron stepped there because it was supposed to be a transition. Now in Cameroon, there's going to be a transition. Everybody is aware of it. He has invited the political stakeholders like Hamto, Cabral Libi, as Fondi, to discuss issues to pacify because that the poor can hit their hand on the table in this nation, there will be upheaval in the country. I'm sure they are taking them indoors to negotiate some things at the expense of the masses. But we, the Cameroonians, are letting them understand that Cameroon is a sovereign nation and its destiny should not be decided by foreigners. Cameroon has to be responsible for the transition of power in this country and not some foreign power coming to dictate for us what to do. That's the foundation I will lay for now before we delve into other issues.
Thank you so much. Time for me, ladies and gentlemen, to welcome political analyst SIAKA Shuneh. Thank you so much, sir, for accepting our invitation. Welcome to 90 Minutes.
Yeah, Mr. Boh. Greetings to all my fellow panelists here, starting with Mr. Ambe, Mr. Ndiwum, and Dr. Ako. It is with much adequate sincerity and grandiloquent exposure that I sojourn today in this emporium to analyze fundamental facts on the visit of President Macron to Cameroon.
Not only Cameroon, to East African tour.
To East African tour. So I want to thank you for giving me that privilege to be here. So together we are going to analyze fundamental facts that would edify the Cameroonian people and the African public.
Of course.
Affairs in Cameroon.
Thank you so much, SIAKA Shuneh. We'll be taking a look at the impact, because of course, even if President Emmanuel Macron has chosen some African countries like Cameroon, Benin and Guinea-Bissau, his visit is going to have an impact on the entire continent, because probably he has chosen them from the various axes, you know, and it's going to have a very, very great impact on the entire continent. Dr. John Ako, probably, thanks for joining us. I'm going to welcome you straight with a question, because time is not on our side. What should be President Emmanuel Macron's message to the entire continent with regards to the food crisis caused by the war in Ukraine? Should we expect a solution from Emmanuel Macron?
It's a bit difficult. In fact, it's a pleasure being on this program. 90 Minutes in Africa, we do everything to promote, we do everything to preserve the value of Africa, and equally look at that area where Africans need to be awakened. And I'm thinking that Africa is a continent that have been toiled over, whose destiny have equally been played around by international politics. But today, if Africans can talk, like we have seen, just cited the example of Central African Republic, the Mali, and many of those victims of French colonization. And I'm beginning to think that Emmanuel Macron coming to Africa, coming to Cameroon or whatsoever warrants, that it is not for the interest of Africans, it is not for the interest of Cameroonians, it is simply a courtoisie visit, a diplomatic visit, which is made to inspect whether the territories of Cameroon is equally going to misbehave like others have done. Feeding Cameroonians is not an issue of the French project. I have not seen anywhere within the French financial bill for 2022 that cited Cameroon as part of its priority to give them food or to feed them with milk or to send rice or gari for free to Cameroon. It is honest that Africans need to make their decisions, and we have again to know that everything that Africans are benefiting from France, it might equally on what they call aids to Africa. Aids to Africa under the auspices of the IMF were meant to keep Africans on their laurels and keep them thinking that they are assistant. One of the greatest empires that would have been in the world is the African Empire. African Empire, which we were taught that Africa is the model of modern civilization. Has that really not affected Africans? Instead, today we see a continent that is struggling to fit at the stripe of a small war, less than 200 million inhabitants. Africa is hungry. Is Africa not capable of taking care of itself? Owing to the fact that the continent is endowed with a lot of natural soil, fertile enough to feed the whole world. I mean, the whole planet can be fed from Africa. Do we need Emmanuel Macron to provide us food? Do we need the French to give us food? Considering that some of them, the soils have been dilapidated, and again today they depend on modern technology to eat. They depend on fertilizers to grow up bananas or tomato. In Africa, we still have such a natural heritage which God has given, but if not of the bad leadership and puppets, which they are always thinking of protecting, and I believe very strongly that the government in Yaoundé is still one of those governments that have been instituted by the French government. For all his first mandate, Macron did not visit Cameroon, and it's coming to Cameroon. We just need to be very careful that his mission is not to rescue Cameroonians, but to rescue the French Empire and French business oligarchs. And we think that sincerely, if the French need to do something for Africa, there is a need for them to come before it and think otherwise, that the French-African relationship need to be built on a new ground with a lot of new developments with what we call the 7 young developing nations. Can Africa make it hail? Can Africa have new partners? Yes, we have seen equally that there is tension at the same time that Macron is visiting Africa. The Russians are equally preparing to visit Africa. Is that not going to be a tussle? Is it not a power of a diplomatic melt? But what Africans should know, they need to know, is that none of these nations is coming for the interest of Africa. Instead, they are looking for markets, they are looking for raw materials, they are looking for that area that they can display more of their population back home. A lot of these nations even lack space to keep mere human beings. Can France really fit Africa?
Thank you, Dr. John Ako. Before we come to SIAKA Shuneh and Apostle Ambe to talk about the possible discussions with regards to security in the Sahel, let me get to Ndiwum, who is the co-founder and Secretary General of the New Era Youth for Africa Civil Society. And you know, the civil society works hand in hand with the press. I happen to have been present during former President François Hollande's visit to tour in Africa. I was present. I covered especially at the level of Cameroon, the presidency of Cameroon, when the president of Cameroon answered a question to the press, ne dure pas au pouvoir qui veut, mais qui peut. At the time when a French journalist asked the question, I was present right there. Emmanuel-Co-founder, the president, various president of Cameroon, president of Benin, and the president of Guinea-Bissau, they are going to have tete-a-tete with President Emmanuel Macron. Of course, we might not have details of all the discussions, but there's also going to be an opportunity for the press to ask questions to President Emmanuel Macron. And if you notice the last time, I'm talking about 2015, you discover that when Emmanuel Macron came to Cameroon, Cameroonian journalists that were there, they asked some questions, but they couldn't ask really, they had questions to François Hollande at that time. At that time it was François Hollande, you know. And when the opportunity was given to the French journalist to ask a question to President Paul Biya, you heard that they asked a very tough question to him. So what is your advice to the press at this particular point in time? We know too that at that time, the now president of the Press Card Commission, Severin Chunke, asked a very tough question to François Hollande at that time about archives of the nation, you know. So what should be the preparation of African journalists as far as the visit of Emmanuel Macron is concerned? Because they are the ones that can really articulate the plight of the people.
Well, to begin with, I don't know whether press organs in other countries could be given the type of treatment that press organs in Cameroon are given. I think maybe in Guinea, maybe in Benin, they'll have a free mind, they'll have a free hand to ask questions. When you take to the scenario of 2015, remember before such an event takes place, I am duly informed that there are people of the Central Committee of the CPDM in Cameroon who have been dispatched to France for some diplomatic defense. And equally back home, we have seen how the CPDM has been mobilizing to receive Emmanuel Macron as the second coming of Christ in Yaoundé. And then you will also understand that the press will not go there as an individual press. They will go there under some kind of teleguiding, you know. They will have to speak with water in their mouth, because there are some questions there that reeks after pronouncing them with your tongue, follows with your head. Yes, follows with your head. So the role of the press, I want to challenge the press that this is the moment for you to rise up and shine. This is the moment for you to show patriotism for the mother continent, which is Africa. Be it Cameroon, be it Benin, be it Guinea. Free your mind and go down to history by asking Macron the questions that Macron needs to be asked.
Exactly. Some of the questions.
Some of the questions we should be asking Macron. Why have you chosen to destabilize Africa in a permanent trend? Because the insecurity in Africa, 80% of it is in the hands of France. It is no longer a hidden secret. We should say it because we are the prophets that have come to give a new lift, a new facelift to Africa. Second question should be, why Macron should choose to always belittle African presidents. I want to think that it's not long ago when Macron granted a press conference in France, in his own home country, and actually ridiculed President Biya by telling everybody that I give him orders. When he locks up an opposition leader in his country, I order him to release before he can dare come to my country. The third question will be
about the France CFA.
About the yes, you have just cut it. You have just cut it. When are they going to give us this economic autonomy to be able to use our own currency? I think the questions are very long. But you journalists are very intelligent. The only thing left for you people now is to use your own consciences and go down into history.
Thank you. I want to say, talking about, because I was reading the French diplomacy website talking about the France CFA, if you ask him that kind of question, SIAKA Shuneh, Emmanuel Macron is going to tell you that every country is free to leave the Franc zone. Every country is free to leave the Franc zone. I mean, Mali has already done it. Guinea, Mauritania, Madagascar, they left. So we are free if any country wants to leave the French. I'm just trying to say, because he might say that every country is free to leave the Franc zone. SIAKA Shuneh, let me now come to you to talk about the kind of the choice of the countries. Why do you think President Macron has chosen Cameroon, Benin, and Guinea-Bissau in this African tour?
That is a very tricky question, but I'll go straight to answer it. Why has he chosen Guinea-Bissau, Benin, and Cameroon?
Meanwhile, as you answer it, I would like to maybe tell our technician to put the theme, the topic of discussion, so that our viewers can know what we're talking about.
All right. Is neocolonialism a reality? Yes, it is. And what is neocolonialism? It is a gross-state campaign of barbarism against the African people, especially those countries that were colonized by the French. Why has President Macron chosen Cameroon? You realize that there is a great upheaval of French colonized nations fighting to cut the link between their nations and France, the colonial master, which is in its gross-state campaign of barbarism, practicing neo-colonialism against their former colonial nations. Cameroon, Benin, and Guinea-Bissau, they are lying in the limbo. They might copy from what Mali, Chad, and the other nations are doing. So it is strategic. He's coming to calm down the situation in Cameroon. He's coming to calm down Benin, calm down Guinea, so that it should not join the recalcitrant Mali, in quotes. The recalcitrant Mali, in quotes, yes, as you say, because they are already instrumentalizing the other African colonies to be able to start questioning their master, France. You know that his visit has 3 strategic points: the geopolitical, the geostrategic, and economic, not keeping security aside. You realize that Africa, French Africa, is going through jihadist movements. We have the Boko Haram in Cameroon. We have the jihadists in Mali. We have the SIAKA and whatsoever in the Central African Republic. And the rebels coming from the north to destabilize Chad. But I always ask this question: who is instrumentalizing Africans against Africans? Who is benefiting from the insecurity that these Africans are causing to these African nations? And where do these jihadists take weapons? I've always said that France is a weapon of mass destruction against the African people, against its own colonies. Because when they destabilize us, they take advantage. You know, they have that principle of divide and rule. They set our brothers against us, then come in. And when they come in, that's how they exploit our natural resources. That's how they exploit us at our own detriment, in the name of helping to protect us with security and weapons and whatsoever. At the same time, when they destroy us, they come and give us fictitious loans. All those fictitious loans are to keep us permanent slaves under their whims and caprices. You even went further to say that some other nations have left the franc CFA zone. Why is the franc CFA still pegged to the French franc when the French franc is now a visual currency? It's not an existing currency. Those are all aspects of practical neo-colonialism. You see, how can we live? In any attempt to live is going to create a situation of war or economic war. Because look at projects that have been financed in Cameroon by the French Development Corporation. How much are we owing them? Colonial debts that we are owing them. So if we have to break away, it's going to be an economic war, and it will take an audacious president to engage in this war. And we understand very well that our system is still masterminded by the French intelligence agencies. And so it becomes very difficult, and it will take an audacious government to break away from them.
Thank you, SIAKA Shuneh. Since August 2014, France has been implementing Operation Barkhane led by the French military against Islamic groups in Africa's Sahel region. And Emmanuel Macron, shortly after his re-election, said he wanted to rethink French military disposition in Africa at the time when the anti-jihadist Barkhane force were about completing departure formalities from Mali. How strategic is Macron's decision to rethink French military disposition in the Sahel?
Because French government practically have no grip over the Sahel. You have the G5 Sahel or Chad, Burkina Faso, Mauritania, Mali, as well as one other country like that. That's the G5 Sahel. And the G5 Sahel has a police that controls that particular part of the continent. There are French soldiers in the G5 Sahel, there's a G5 Sahel police. Yet, the security in that particular part of the country is very volatile. Armed forces are being killed between Mali and Burkina Faso border consistently. There is an Am-Rasoul group of rebels that captured the ancient city of Timbuktu in 2012. The French government claimed to have sent forces that pushed the Am-Rasoul militia group away from the ancient city of Timbuktu. Yet the security situation is very, very porous. With all what is happening, Burkina Faso has a challenge, Mali has a challenge, Chad has a challenge. What kind of security is Operation Barkhane carrying out in the G5 Sahel area that constantly there are lootings, there are maiming and fighting and destruction over all that particular environment? It is to let you understand that the particular interest of the French government in that part of the country is to concentrate on the resources that belong to those countries there. Do you know that there is a part in Gao, in Mali, that is occupied by the French army for many years, and that's where gold is extracted from Mali? Do you know there's a part in Niger where they are extracting uranium that is occupied by French forces, not Nigerian forces? That's to only understand that the forces of the French forces in the G5 Sahel area are not there for security. They are there to protect France's interests. Number two, Mali rose up recently to kick out all French forces out of Mali. Niger president accepted the forces to be shifted from Mali into Niger when Mali is trying to kick out France's grip over the continent, over their country. Mali has gold. France is the third reserve of gold in the world, yet they have no gold mine. How can somebody be the highest producer of gold and doesn't have a gold mine? That's to let you understand that he is living on somebody's ashes. That's why I said French is more of the plasmodium parasite in Africa that afflicts its victims and kills them slowly. That is why you see Mali has decided to take a very drastic step by kicking France out of the country of Mali. One, the French ambassador is taken out of Mali. Two, RFE is silent out of Mali. France 24 shut out of Mali. Four, Mali forces and French forces in Mali kick out of Mali. Now Mali is drafting a new constitution and trying to create a new currency and walking out of the French zone. That is the original Malian society we are talking about. Mali is 95% Muslim, 3% traditional and 2% Christians. There is an imam in Bamako called Mahmoud Diko. Mahmoud Diko is solely behind Assimi Goïta, and there is a force behind the Malian people behind Assimi Goïta. Mercenaries were sent recently from Côte d'Ivoire through Alassane Ouattara to eliminate Assimi Goïta, and they were arrested at Bamako airport. And then Alassane Ouattara said it is UN forces that were sent into that country. Listen, let me tell you, Africans have come to a place where they will no longer be rigmarolled. They will no longer be tossed to and fro. And I think the courage of Assimi Goïta is sending a message to all African countries. And Russia is infiltrating Africa terribly because the fall of France in Mali is with the aid of Russia. When Russia signed the Wagner company deal with Mali to engage mercenary forces to stand against French forces in Mali, that was when the trouble started. Now, seeing the situation in Cameroon, our president also has signed a deal with the Wagner to come and maintain security in the northern and the southwest and other part of the country. They feel like Russia is penetrating. And I think very well, if you go now to to Central African Republic, it's Russian forces that are taking care of the presidency. The president was slightly assassinated recently, but because of the intelligence of the Russian forces, and Faustin Touadera in Central African Republic, because France say will never give up. When
also
the
to indicate to Apostle Ambe that Russia too is planning a tour.
Of course, Russia foreign minister. Yes, Russia foreign minister. All right, is trying to do it in Africa because there is a tussle. There is a tussle right now. You see, the crisis in Ukraine is just a platform through which Russia is using to fulfill its bitterness and anger against the West in most African countries for years. Correct. You see, Russia had taken time to calculate the whole of this thing very well. When they were kicked out of SWIFT, SWIFT is a control that influences the use of the dollars in all countries in the world. So when they thought they were kick Russia out of the SWIFT, the Russian central bank governor said that Russia can still operate out of sea successfully for many years without counting on the dollars. Now, Russia now sells fuel to other countries under rubles, not under dollars anymore. And every commission that was destined to be collected by the dollar for using it, it has been dropped. You see now, Indonesia, Malaysia, Brazil, China, and other countries are trying to create another monetary, and they need at least $2.2 billion to set up a structure that will beat the International Monetary Fund and equally beat the World Bank, whereby you will no longer need the dollar anymore to carry out activities in the world. So there is a battle. The Ukraine war was just a platform. Now Russia is taking that one to penetrate the continent Africa and to make sure, because we are going to be talking about which devil do we prefer, because Russia is a devil, but I will prefer Russia a better devil than France. Because why? Russia in the past, during the apartheid, helped to send forces that helped to fight the apartheid in South Africa. On the 2nd of October 1958, Ambe was the only country that turned down the letter of de Gaulle asking other French colonies to become overseas territories, because there was a letter sent by de Gaulle to Africa that all French colonies to serve as overseas territories of France. The only person that stood against the letter was Ambe, led by a leading on the 2nd of October 1958, where Guinea-Conakry got independence. So Guinea-Conakry championed the independence of French West African countries, while Kwame Nkrumah, through the English countries, championed the independence of English African countries. Why am I giving all this analysis? Is to let you understand that France has always treated its former colonies as overseas territories. They don't have any sovereignty, they have no right, they have no influence, they have no authority. They are supposed to be treated as external provinces of France in another continent.
Thank you, Apostle Ambe. We'll be coming back to you. When we come back to you and the other panelists, we are going to be looking at nation by nation. That will look at Cameroon, the stakes in Cameroon, look at the stakes in Benin, look at the stakes in Guinea-Bissau. Now, let me come to Dr. Akwo, who is our legal expert in the studio. Dr. Akwo, for France so loves Africa. For France so loves Africa, that France has... Okay, Dr. Akwo, we'll get to Ndiwum Emmanuel. We'll get to Ndiwum Emmanuel so that one Dr. Akwo's camera to be well arranged. Ndiwum Emmanuel, for France who loves Africa, that they decided to send Barkhane force to protect us and against the jihadists, and they're so concerned when Mali tells them that we don't want you again, we want you to leave our territory, let us take charge of our security. They love us so much. Can we say that France loves us so much that they want to take charge of our security?
I think the question should have been, for France so much loved African resources that they send their forces to come and secure the exploitation of these forces, so that the volume that has already been banked in their reserves could be increased, not that they loved Africa. If France loved Africa, France would not have been sponsoring wars in Africa, because most terrorist movements across Africa are sponsored by France.
Can we, maybe it's an allegation. Can we? I don't know. It's good that we just say what we can say. That allegation.
Well, I take the responsibility.
Oh, yes, okay.
I am repeating that most terrorist groups in Africa are sponsored by France, either directly or indirectly. When you talk about the Balkan forces coming in because they wanted to protect Africa, it's a folklore. You know, France is like that man who do not know how to hunt, but he eats the greatest share from the hunter's booty. That's what France is. And they have learned the game so much so that they have been succeeding. Now the next question should be, why have they been succeeding? Our African leaders have given them the leeway to succeed. Because when an African president stands up to actually say, I am the best student to France, he is inviting France to take control over his country. If you don't come home with, I think, termite-infested firewood, you will not find termites in your home. So when you stand up and you declare that I'm a best student to France, you are inviting France to rule over your home. When you stand up and you say, I have come to render account to you, rendering account of what you discuss back home is like a husband has a crisis with a wife at home. They sit down at home to discuss. After the discussion, the husband takes to render account to somebody somewhere of the discussion that went on between him and the wife. So we have to be asking pertinent questions. Our African leaders have sold Africa to France. So we are blaming France, but we should be asking the question to ourselves, can Africa not come up as a bloc to say no to France? Mali is struggling today in isolation. Why is Cameroon not joining Mali? Why is Burkina Faso not joining Mali? Why is Côte d'Ivoire trying to become a ploy, the soft spot through which France could pass to get at Mali? You discover that Africa has failed, African leaders have failed Africans. Because us talking here as Africans, it is our will and our wish that Africa should be emancipated. But is that the same wish that African leaders hold so dear to their hearts? No. Why? Because of greed and personal interest. They love for power. Most of them want to die in power. So they want to go to France, for France, because France will protect them in case of an uprising. Let me recall to you that in many African countries, with Cameroon not being an exception, with the case of 2008 uprising, you will discover that France had a role to play. And France was appreciated by our own leaders. So we cannot say clearly that our leaders are not the one bringing home the firewood-infested termites, and so they have a hand in it.
Thank you, Ndiwum. Let me come to Dr. Ako. Dr. Ako, Emmanuel Macron will be beginning his visit in Cameroon, and you know that President Paul Biya has been there for close to 40 years, and he has probably received and held talks with so many French presidents. This will also be an opportunity probably for Emmanuel Macron to discuss and tap from the wisdom of President Paul Biya. But how can President Paul Biya play his cards in a way that it will not only benefit Cameroon but benefit the entire Africa? Being a president that has been there for close to 40 years now, So how can he play his cards in such a way that the visit is going to, so that the visit should be beneficial not only to Cameroon but to the entire Africa? I think you can talk directly on the camera because President Paul Biya is surely watching the program now and you want to get some advice.
Well, it really, Boh, it is very sad for you asking me such a question that was not meant to be. One of the things we need to know is that President Paul Biya has been one of the dullest students from France. Dullest in the sense that we have not benefited anything for his 40 years vis-a-vis cutting off ties with France. We have seen a lot of initiative to cut off the France-Africa relationship. We have seen a lot of presidents coming out vocally to say it is time for Africa to stand. We have never heard a statement or a declaration. I know this is the number one of Mr. Shuneh. He's his political party chairman. It might not accept in any aspect with me, but I will tell you that those leadership, the type of leadership we have analyzed a time ago, there are some people who were designated from the beginning to serve French interests. And one of those leadership that has served French interests without ceasing or failing for a second is the Cameroonian president. Cameroonian president, yes, student from France, manipulated his way through Ayijo and became president And for close to 40 years now, we're unable to replace him because France is still maneuvering elections. You should equally know that some people might not be aware, in 1992, it is the French that instructed that Paul Biya be reinstalled as the president of the nation. But when Fundi won that election, and we're all aware that he was going to do so. One of the things which we tried to see, and we have been thinking, that it can never be possible, there will never be a day President Paul Biya will speak firmly against the French, for he who pays the piper calls the tune. As the French has never failed him, he too will never fail the French. He is simply just praying now, you know.
But we've seen President Paul Biya opening up to Russia and China.
Yes, opening up is different. The fact is that he is close with France does not stop him from making new friends. The fact that we are closer does not stop you to be a friend to Mr. Shuneh. And that means that he is free to make new friends. But the extent of the relationship with those new friends will closely be monitored. Remember, there is no ambassador in this country that visits President Paul Biya and talk with him regularly than the French ambassador. That you need to know. Why all this series of visits? Even when other diplomats are thinking it's unnecessary, but they have been finding their way. It means that somebody is answerable to another and gives account of the way forward. When we finish here with what they call the monologue which the head of state organized, and with instruction from France that there is no referendum, there is no negotiation, the report was carried by our own president to a young man of 39 at the time to give him a report of how the monologue went. Do you think in any way? We were talking of the case of Bolloré. You remember the controversies over the Douala deep sea port and the new port constructed in Kribi. We thought it was time for Cameroon to cut off. Remember, again, people should know that more than the cost of life in Cameroon today is linked to the activities and the insurance or whatever taxation at the level of the port that we buy from abroad in over 30,000 francs, and then by the time you are selling at 100,000 because taxes have engulfed a lot of what you have brought in, and everybody is talking of Bolloré. We were thinking that Cameroon Port Authority, which is a state institution, could manage the Kribi deep sea port. At the time, all Cameroonians were clamoring that it is time for us to manage our own activities. You know what happened? That François Hollande entered there at 5:30 p.m. and left at midnight same day, signing 5 different economic agreements. One of those was giving the Kribi deep sea port back again to Bolloré. Does that sound reasonable? I don't want to get to other mischiefs like building the second bridge over River Vuri. When China promised building the second bridge far off from where the bridge is now settled, at how much? And the bridge ended up being given to French institutions. And the French institution turned around and sublet the same contract to the same Chinese. Does that make you that the leadership we have in Cameroon is independent? Never. People will tell you that he is smart, he has been doing things greatly. A lie. Everything is that he remains the president of Cameroon, and the France will continue withdrawing their interests without delayance. You are going to see this visit, and maybe by the end of the 27th of this month, we will ask ourselves what has changed and what was he told. Nothing will be told. It is a comprehensive visit to review. When you look at the program, the calendar tells you that it will take into consideration social, economic meetings, a lot of people, how Cameroon is going, and where France will act. You know, the quarrel last week was over the 40 billion promised by the French to construct the Northwest and the Southwest. And you find the chairman of that commission who is thinking that the commission is poor because the government was depending on the 40 billion from France. But we were in need of over 100 billion France CFA. Why is the 40 billion from France being so questionable until we are talking about it? We are unable to raise even 30% of that money. So this is a worry. Are the French really there to help Africa? Can the President of the Republic tell the French that we are no longer okay with you? They have their might. Remember, the most technical part of our military today is still being ruled by France. No matter what, we have other forces around, which means at any time they can cause the havoc they did. You remember the case of Idriss Déby, and those all outdated, obsolete brains would not like similar incident to occur to them, that they are ready to inject and create circumstances that can pull you down within a second. And the moment Déby was assassinated, the rebels in Jamena all disappeared. The weapons they have, we are still doubting where they kept those weapons and how the mission went on successfully. These are the things that we are saying. If we want, because to me, I was thinking, like the Kwame Nkrumah did, like the Thomas Sankara did, it would be better to die a hero than to die a servant of a foreign nation. This is what history tells us. The impact you create to your people is what matters. We don't need what you have done to yourself. The billions you embark to keep in the secret bank account for yourself doesn't matter. The life impact in your nation. Also, we are talking of Sakuru Toure, we are talking of Kwame Nkrumah. They did not have anything extraordinary, but the interest of the people they carry at hand. Cameroonians are presently suffering. Before the coming of President Emmanuel Macron, have you seen our president coming out to tell Cameroonians that I have seen that things are getting difficult, but now we are being ruled by high instruction? Imagine such a lazy leader being the president of a nation. He has nothing to do than to kittle, than to caress, than to romance those who maintain him in that particular position. In a real nation, if you can't serve your people, you are not fit to be a leader. So this group of leaders, which we have, there are about 5 or 6 of them still living under care of the French, the Denis Sassou Nguesso, President Paul Biya of Cameroon. They are there to continue softening. Their children will take over after that. And we keep on talking and nothing will still change. The right to talk is your right, but the right after talking is what many Africans are still doubting, including Cameroon.
Thank you, Dr. John Ako. Let me come to SIAKA Shuneh. SIAKA Shuneh, of course, he is in this program today as a political analyst, but we don't forget that President Paul Biya is his political model. President Paul Biya is his political model. SIAKA Shuneh, we are talking about Cameroon now, and very soon, before we move to Benin, very soon I'll move to Apostle Ambe and Ndiwum Emmanuel to talk about how France can work in collaboration with Cameroon President Paul Biya for the resolution of security affairs of Cameroon. I'm talking about Boko Haram and the Anglophone conflict, because France too can have a role to play. But before that, I want you to react to the allegations that President Paul Biya is not a very bright student of France. And I want you to react to those allegations, even though we've had some African presidents that have openly hailed President Paul Biya. Those who have spoken with him, they have openly hailed him to say that he is a wise leader, that when they talk to him, they find that he's a reservoir of wisdom. Do you still, after listening to the points raised by Dr. John Ako, what do you have to say? Do you now share Dr. John Ako's view that President Paul Biya is not as bright as his other opponents seem to what his other opponents say about him?
Yes, Mr. Boh. It's a misconstrued political outburst from Dr. Ako, whom I hold in high esteem. I'm flabbergasted by the way he has presented Mr. Biya, a force tranquil, a man in whom we trust his clairvoyance, who has piloted the affairs of this nation for over 40 years with a lot of wisdom. You bear with me that I agree that Cameroon is a victim of neocolonialism from the French. Cameroon is a victim of the divide and rule policy by the French. But you agree with me that His Excellency Paul Biya, in whom I trust in his clairvoyance again, has been the most audacious president of all the French colonies in Africa, who has gone as far as challenging the authority and the supremacy of French domination in French Africa. You know that Mr. Biya has brought in the Chinese. He has signed military and economic cooperation pacts with the Chinese against the whims and caprices of the French.
And he signed military cooperation with Russia.
He has brought in the Russians against the wish and desires of the French. He will only take an audacious and a strong child to do that against the wish of his parents. The French know that Mr. Biya is not very comfortable with what the French are doing in Cameroon and other French African countries. But being a force tranquil, he's not taking it as an open fight, because it's a geopolitical strategy. You don't fight somebody who has weapons more than you. You don't fight somebody who has advanced technology in warfare more than you in an open battle. You go through it in a calm and strategic manner. And that is who Mr. Biya is. Mr. Biya is just strategic politician. As a matter of fact, I want to say that he is the only president who did political sciences, who understands the whims and caprices of political leadership. He is calm and he's gentle to his approach. You realize that when President Macron came to power, President Macron openly challenged the human rights records of Mr. Biya. He openly challenged the political leadership of Mr. Biya. And he openly refused that he cannot visit Cameroon. But after his first mandate, he had understood that Mr. Biya is a force to reckon with. He has understood that Mr. Biya is a square peg in a square hole. That's why shamelessly he has accepted to come and consult the Grand Master. And we are delighted to know that he has humbled himself to come to Cameroon. His coming to Cameroon is very strategic. You know that we are going through a political transition in a few years to come. He might be afraid that the transition will bring up somebody who will not be able to respect the rules and regulations of French neo-colonialist system again. And you agree with me that Mr. Biya is one of those African leaders who is totally against French neo-colonialism influence in French Africa. So probably he is coming to convince the Grand Master, but we know that he stands for the interests of Cameroonian people, and Mr. Biya is not going to cede him. Economically, we know that we are going through a political upheaval in Cameroon, the Boko Haram insurgency in the north, the Central African excursions into East Cameroon, and the Anglophone crisis. It is affecting French investment in Cameroon. And to that light, it can now bring in foreign investors like China and Russia, who share a common vision with that of Mr. Biya in developing Africa for the interests of Africa. So I want to say that I acknowledge the fact that France is not is a strategic partner in Cameroon. As a matter of fact, they own 13% of our exports, which is the highest. And I think that Dr. Ako was just like beating about the bush for Mr. Biya. As a matter of fact, is consulting with Macron as equal partners.
Thank you so much. You can participate in the discussion, and thank God that you were here today too also, because we, our 90 Minutes in Africa, we always try all possible means to ensure that we are fair and balanced. You can join the conversation. Macron as a mason to rebuild French broken walls in Africa. You will not advise to call, please. If you want to send a message, just send your message via WhatsApp or SMS, and we are going to read it out. Let's take messages coming in from our viewers. Mbianyi Valerie, greetings to the entire panelists, especially Dr. Ako John, Apostle, and Mr. Ndiwum. Ngenze, greetings to you all in the studio. It is a great and educative program, especially with the presence of Dr. Ako, Mr. Ndiwum, and Apostle Ambe. France has never worked and will never work for the interest of Africa. For the interest of Africa, precisely Cameroon. The coming of the French president is in Cameroon is to further strengthen her colonial policies and not for the good of Cameroon. Watching from Kumba, that is Ngenze. Kingston Fado says, Mr. Ako, the truth must be spoken. And No Kalo Emus Mungo says, African leaders have failed us, my brothers. France has no positive agenda concerning our beloved country, Cameroon. Our government is being remote controlled by France for their benefits. And Salah Jodone, Cameroonians are most educated and least developed. Is that not shameful? Kingston Fado. Then we have Enena Lane. Changing the banknote, the value of the money is still the same. It's of no use for the citizens. And Joseph Bache, Mr. Ako, tell them, show them your stuff, sir. Duke Kumche, SIAKA is a member of the motion support team for CPDM. Hand clappers. This Duke, somebody who doesn't like you, Shaka Sune, no, whatever. Yeah, he's expressing whatever the case. Then Bafur above, where does the CPDM? Of course, okay, you see people are. Feel free, please, to send your views, but don't attack other people's views. We ensure here on 90 Minutes in Africa, all views matter. And then we have It is obvious that your commentators know nothing about Paul Biya and Cameroon. It's shameful to listen to such nonsense. This is Isaac Nkwa, who is, I think he should be a supporter of President Paul Biya. Please feel free to join SIAKA if you want. You can write me. I will give you the number of SIAKA. Feel free to always come to the program if you find that the commentators are not up to the task as per you are reading. We can always invite you to come and talk. The program is really very open to everyone. Let us talk about the solution to the Anglophone conflict in Cameroon and security issues, especially Boko Haram, before we move to Benin and Guinea-Bissau. Apostle Ambe, people are not talking about this, but I think it's also very important for President Emmanuel Macron to discuss with President Paul Biya about ending the Anglophone conflict. Of course, France has always been behind Cameroon in the war against Boko Haram, but I think too that the most pressing war in Cameroon now is not Boko Haram, but the war in the English-speaking part of Cameroon. What should President Paul Biya and Emmanuel Macron discuss with regards to ending the conflict in the English-speaking part of Cameroon?
Yeah, Elvis, trying to talk about Macron's intervention in ending the conflict between the west of Cameroon and the east of Cameroon gives me running stomach and nausea, because this is not a time that if France were to intervene, it's supposed to be coming to this country by now. We had horrific images emanating from the northwest and the southwest of military being killed, their heads being chopped off, hung on sticks in the street, mothers dying, little children dying. I'm sure those images were strong enough to have compelled any human being with a conscience to have come down here for a rapid solution to end the Anglophone crisis. Not now that the very embers of the Anglophone crisis are dying off from the wood. Then you're expecting Macron to come and do what? Because to me, the Anglophone crisis is not as critical as it is, or as it was. From 2016, 2017, 2018, we're at the heat. The Englishman says a stitch in time saves 9. This time around, the material is already torn into several pieces. What is Macron coming to do? To stitch the torn pieces of the material? Is he coming to assemble the dispatched pieces of the material? Because when the first torn came up, we expected him to come into the picture and then stitch it so that the rest of the material will not be torn. But this time around, the material is torn into several pieces. People have died, properties destroyed, some refugees, others internally displaced, education halted, military died, civilians died, innocents died, and then Macron is coming when we don't even have very serious issues again dealing with. Guns were smoking in 2016, 2017, 2018, almost every day in the northwest and southwest, but you may sit now for at least a day or two before you hear gunshot anywhere. That is to let you understand that the crisis is not as hot as it were in 2016, 2017. For Macron to have been coming now to solve the Anglophone crisis, to me, is a sign of mockery. It's a humiliation to the poor of Cameroon, because they never had any interest to solve the crisis. Anything he's going to do right now is to blindfold, is to, how do I put it, to deceive Cameroonians that is coming in for peace. Macron was supposed to have come to this country as somebody who got the interest of Cameroonians when people were dying in their numbers, and the whole social media flooded with images of people dying, innocent children, military's head being chopped off and hung on poles in the street, boys being shot down, mothers dying, children dying, individuals running away, others sleeping in bushes, women using leaves as pad to pad themselves from menstrual flow. All those horrific images and very sorrowful moments were supposed to have touched the conscience of any living creature, to have known that these people need a rapid intervention. What is the essence of you coming to Cameroon now? To come and do what? To come and sit and talk what? To deliberate what? Why is it coming now when almost everything is dying off? When people have died all? As a matter of fact, the way we are right now, there's no fear of death anymore, because I've seen so many people die. There's no fear of gunshot. We've heard the sound of all kinds of guns. We are not afraid to stay in the bushes because all kinds of animals have met us in the bushes. We are not afraid to leave the country to another location because many have stayed in Nigeria beyond stay and even control. We are no longer afraid. because the fear of death has disappeared. We were expecting a Messiah to come in. When the world had a sin, Jesus Christ stepped at the right time to bring peace and serenity. Macron is not coming to solve any problem. Macron is coming to bring a solution after the problem had already passed. We expected a solution within the problem, not a solution after the problem. That's what we are expecting right now. So discussing Anglophone crisis with President Paul Biya or the stakeholders in the country will not solve any problem, because a lot has gone down the drain. There are wounds in the crisis that will never be healed till eternity. Macron is not that doctor, is not that surgeon that will come and operate us to cure that turmoil that sits in our heart and our brain based on the crisis that people have gone through. Macron is not that surgeon that will come to remove that mast in our womb that has blocked the intake of children. Macron is not that pediatrician that will come to bring back the dead children who died. Macron is not that general practitioner that will come to treat us the malaria that we contracted in the bushes. Macron is not that Messiah that we were expecting when the crisis was eating very deep into our fabrics. Now, all the things we guarded, we jealously protected, they are lost. School lost, churches lost, children lost, parents lost, military lost. We've lost roads, we've lost structures, we've lost almost everything. What is he coming to protect again? We needed him to protect all these things from going down, but he couldn't come. What is he coming to protect again? Now there is nothing to lose anymore. There is nothing to lose.
Thank you, Apostle Ambe Valentine. We're getting to Ndiwum. Well, before we come to Benin, while our legal expert in the studio, prepares to talk about the stakes of the visit in Benin, Ndiwum is remaining in Cameroon to talk about activists. You know, Macron is also coming to Cameroon at the time where, in the past years, you remember that two Cameroonian activists met Macron in the streets in a very, very dramatic manner. We have Calibri, who was a Cameroonian activist who met Emmanuel Macron, crying to him that Macron, things are not going in Cameroon, things are not going in Cameroon. Secondly, we also have Winfried Kanga, who is a top of recent, a top member of the Cameroon Renaissance Movement, one of the political parties in Cameroon, who met Emmanuel Macron and was crying in the streets of Paris. Oh, Macron, things are not going in Cameroon. And Macron said he has been discussing with President Paul Biya for him to open up the democratic game in the country. And so what should be the message of political opposition leaders in Cameroon, like Nijon Frundi, Maurice Kamto, and Cabral Libi, if they are given the opportunity to meet Emmanuel Macron face to face?
Thank you for that question, but I want to start from the question you asked Apostle, if the coming of President Macron to Cameroon could trigger a solution. And I want to think that neither Yaoundé nor Paris is ready for the end to the Anglophone crisis. Paris and Yaoundé, they are still very much enjoying the destruction and the devastation that's going on in Northwest and Southwest. You know, it's a war that has benefited many people, and they wouldn't like to lose these benefits in a very short while. They would love to extend it. Now, coming back to the message, I would have loved the political leaders to give to Macron. Permit me if I say I regret to say that, you know, my stand, I have never accepted that there's a political party in Cameroon as of now. We have more of some Jangi houses, some associations that have buried the wishes and the will of Cameroonians for so long a time. You know, this famous 1990 association or Njangi group that came up called SDF fooled Cameroonians for so long a time, and Cameroonians fell into this trap. That is actually what explains why Cameroon is where it is today. And so each time we talked of it, MLC came up in 2018. We thought that they were the Messiah that have come to maybe take the Cameroonians out of the political wilderness. They instead again plunged Cameroonians into another political wilderness, because each political party emerges because they want to take power. If you are not coming up because you want to take power, you are not a political party. You saw people like Cabral Libi, of whom I call today a branch of the ruling party in Cameroon. Cabral Libi is actually a branch of the CPDM association, because in all of these associations, they have a leader, and that leader is a CBD. I will not expect any message to leave Cabral Libi and go to Macron for the benefit of Cameroonians. Neither will I expect come to Noni John Fundi to say anything meaningful, because all of them has all failed Cameroonians. As a matter of fact, where Cameroonians...
So which opposition leader can speak for Cameroonians?
No.
You cannot say that we don't have any opposition leader more.
As a matter of fact, if Macron wants to get the real message of Cameroonians, let him go down to Ekona, let him go down to Njinicom, let him go down to Bali, let him go to Bafut, let him go to Kwakwa, solicit the attention of the people in those areas. He will get the real history of Cameroon. He will get the test of what Cameroonians are going through. If he should end in Yaoundé, take a message of Cabral Libi, who has never been to Bamenda. Take a message from Kamto, who has not been to Bamenda during this crisis. Take a message from Frundi, who is a refugee in Yaoundé. Then he has taken no message. If he should remain in Yaoundé and believe that what these political parties will tell, association, these Jangi groups will tell him, is what the people on the ground are suffering from, then he's leaving Cameroon with a basket full of lies and sealed, covered with beautiful flowers. If he should remain in Yaoundé and think that he came to Cameroon to talk for the interest of the common man that has failed the blunt of this war in West Cameroon, then Macron visited Yaoundé. He did not visit Cameroon.
Thank you, Emmanuel, Ndiwum, Alko. Let's get 3 minutes because we have 15 minutes to the end of the show. Let's talk about Benin. I know that you surely you have a reaction to say concerning what Ndiwum said?
No, come over.
Oh, okay, you want to say about Cameroon? Then finish about Cameroon so we move to Benin and Guinea-Bissau.
Okay, as Mr. Ndiwum was saying, I'm one of those who believe that if we don't have the opportunity to meet Macron in Yaoundé as all the other political leaders will do, this is a platform where we can challenge Macron with a few questions. I would have expected him to ask his questions here so that it can inspire some of those journalists who are going to be with Macron in Yaoundé to be able to ask him those questions. Because if I was given the opportunity to meet Macron, I will ask him these questions. Is French Africa not yet matured enough to have its own currency and define its political policy? Why did they depend on France? Or why is France imposing their policy on French colonies in Africa? I'll ask him this question. Then I'll ask him this second question. Democracy is one of the numerous forms of government. Is democracy the right form of government for French African countries? Because before, Africa was great. And they were great. We had great leaders. We had the Mali Empire. We had the Ghana Empire. We had the Sumangurus. They came and distorted our history and imposed their own form of government to us that practically it has not worked up to today. Thirdly, why is the franc CFA still pegged to the French franc? And Macron will pretentiously say that each country is free to leave. If you are locking my destiny in your house and think that I can take it freely, why don't you open the door and throw me out? If I'm given the opportunity to meet Macron, I'll ask him these questions. Because these are the questions that are running in the minds of African leaders. These are the questions that are running in the mind of President Paul Biya and his government. But because they cannot, their security is not guaranteed from France, after asking France these questions, they are afraid to ask. We have asked these questions.
Journalists are free to ask questions. Journalists have nothing to do with France. I think journalists are free.
That is why I'm saying that the journalists can ask on behalf of the political leaders of the whose security and the people are not guaranteed after asking this question to the French people.
Thank you. Let me read the messages and then Dr. Ako talks about Benin and then Apostle Ambe talks about Guinea-Bissau and then we take the last words and we end the program. Greetings to you guys in the studio. Please, there is no official document of Mr. Macron meeting any opposition political leader. The document circulating on the social media of Macron meeting with some opposition leaders has been debunked by the communication department of the French embassy. Courage to you guys. I am currently following the program. This is coming from Jean Denis, the leader of the People Action party. Elijah Nwaku, senior researcher on African development from Leeds University, writes, Elvis in the Apostle Ambe, Macron angered Paul Biya when he said the Cameroon military committed acts of atrocities in the northwest and southwest. And recently, Winfried Ikanga's exchanges with Macron angered President Biya further to threaten bringing in the Wanga group. So Macron is coming to smoothen the wounds that he inflicted on President Biya in order to persuade him from going the Mali way. The Anglophone issue is not and will not go in Macron's agenda, except when the journalists might ask him. We should not be dreaming. Kamto and Frundi and the rest have been scrapped from Macron's agenda. His interest is French interest, not the Anglophone issue. Okay, coming, this is Isaac, coming to this other message coming from Isaac Okwa. Did Macron tell you that he is coming in Cameroon for the NOSO? But NOSO means Northwest and Southwest. That's how they refer to it in French. Macron and Europe do not care about us. Stop taking ourselves too high. There are so many wars around the world, and the world is not solving them. If we don't solve our problems, nobody will solve them. Macron is here for Europe, not for Cameroon. Stop abusing politicians, your political commentators. So let's talk about Benin now. Let's talk about Benin now. Dr. John Ako, let me read an excerpt from RFI, which is the French news organ. RFI says, Macron will move on Wednesday to Benin, a neighboring of Africa's most populous nation, Nigeria. The north of the country has faced more deadly attacks with the jihadist threat now, with the jihadist threat. So, I think I lost the page there. Okay, Macron will move on Wednesday to Benin, a neighbor of Africa's most populous nation, Nigeria. The north of the country has faced more deadly attacks with the jihadist threat now spreading from the Sahel to the Gulf of Guinea. He is likely to be lauded for championing the return in November of 26 historic treasures which were stolen in 1892 by French colonial forces from Abomey, capital of the former Dahomey Kingdom located in the south of modern-day Benin. Benin was long praised for its thriving multi-party democracy, but critics say its democracy has steadily eroded under President Patrice Talon over the last half-decade. Patrice Talon, Dr. John Ako, who was in the opposition and came to power, but he's been accused of still going the way the other former president of the country was going, and he doesn't seem to be, I mean, as per his detractors, that he doesn't seem to be acting like someone who was in the position yesterday.
Yeah, what we see here is a true African nature. Patrice Talon was highly applauded when he came to power. And today we realize, if anybody will tell you, is that Talon was very critical of the government in place. And again, France has always considered that Benin was seemingly becoming a model of the new African democracy within Francophone Africa. So we were thinking that there's going to be that renewal of trust that Talon was trying to give the electorate. Today, again, people should know equally that there is a lot of political intimidation in Benin. People should equally know that the main opposition leader of that particular country was sentenced in 2021 to 20 years imprisonment for opposing and criticizing the government of Patrice Talon rudely. And he becomes again very much aware that Africans, at times, when you listen to the words of what Donald Trump said, that there are guys who give them weapons but they don't know what to do with, and that the only thing they can do with that weapon is to use it against themselves. That when democracy was given, it was an interest to serve human beings. Today, democracy has been turned to first a service of those who are in power. So Patrice Talon, which means there is no need for Africans crying that he who was in power is more evil than you who is coming up. I mean, this will come back to condole or to corroborate with what Ndiwum said here, that all oppositions in Cameroon are simply Jangi houses or common associations. And you will imagine that there is no interest in belonging to which other party. Africans who are born to be leaders are not rulers. And when you are leading, you put others first and self last. And which means that the interests of the Beninois have been in more jeopardy. Instead, an opposition leader becoming the president, people were thinking that they were going it was going to flow milk and honey in that particular country. Yes, people will see that equally, like you heard from the communique. Macron has been highly applauded. for returning close to 26 different cultural treasures to Beninois. These were treasures that were given a lot of money in French museums and bringing them back for what Beninois were considering their own. Remember, we equally have things like Afuacom. Cameroonians have been fighting that one day Afuacom will come back. And so the day whosoever will decide. This is how French toil with Africans. At one point, they placed us in a way that they try to give us some small trips so that we feel like they are doing it for us. So a lot of people are expecting that French President Macron is going to talk with Patrice Talon to strengthen the path to democracy. That Benin has been that which protects the interests of French and was trying to put French countries, nation as one of the best. If today Talon is intimidating opposition leader, we should equally know that Strasbourg, which is a French town, hosts the International Court on Human Rights, and which means that democracy is believed as the equivalent. You must have a more refined institution to host such institution related to human rights. How can Talon be intimidating people now in his country when he was looked upon as somebody that was going to bring more life to the nation? So France is equally, really, a lot of people said in Élysée, there are a lot of controversies about whether Talon should continue being the president of Benin, because the moment you have an evil president in Africa, all the evil of that particular leadership always stems from France. And so France has always been accused of manipulating these very people and bringing them to power. We hope that Macron will really have opportunity to brief Patrice Talon and tell him that democracy is an instrument to serve all, not just an individual.
Thank you, Dr. Ako. I read this excerpt from RFI, which is the French overseas media structure. Quote, on Thursday, and then Macron will finish his tour in Guinea-Bissau, which has been riven by political crisis at a time when its president, Umaro Sissoco Embalo, is preparing to take the helm of the economic community of West African states. So what are the stakes of this visit to Guinea-Bissau, Apostle Ambe?
Elvis, you have to understand that Guinea-Bissau, first and foremost, was not colonized by France. It was colonized by Portugal. And since Portugal does not have a lot of colonies in Africa to influence with its own currency, they had to come into the France zone. Now that they are under the France zone, they are now part of the colonies considered as former French colonies, but it's not actually a French colony, it's a Portuguese colony. That foundation should be clear, because people think that because they're using CFA, they are colonized by France. No, it's Portugal under América Cabral. Now, like I said earlier, Macron's visit to Africa is more of economic interest than political interest. I'm telling you, people don't understand. There are issues when France wants to manage political transition in countries, they use their ambassadors. There's no need for a president to step out of France to come down. The first time Hollande came to this country was when the position of Bolloré was threatened. That's economic interest. Most of the companies you see in other countries like Total, you may think that individual property of Bolloré, it is French colonies under the banner of an individual. That's why every nation must be into business. They don't just get money through taxes. The reason why we are facing a lot of difficulty in Cameroon is because we depend only on taxes. Cameroon does not do business as a nation. French people do business. Bolloré is a French-sponsored company. Total is a French-sponsored company. Friedlander is a French-sponsored company. Perenco is a French-sponsored company. Lukoil is a Russian-sponsored company. Gazprom is a Russian-sponsored company. And if we don't understand that nations do business out from the taxes that they collect, we're going to be in total trouble. France coming to Africa is purely on economic interest. The CFA, I'll explain to you, does not have reserve in the World Bank anymore for exchange of goods and services. So they were leaning on France to give them credit letters in order to bring imports, because the account in the in the World Bank is empty. That money has accumulated to a level where France can no longer bear the burden anymore. If you have been going through something, you will see new banknotes of the CFA has been reprinted. That new banknote is to deceive us, it's for devaluation. I want us to understand that the interest for this new banknote is to make us admire the splendor of its appearance, while the value has to drop. And Benin is under CFA. We have SEMAC here. We have WAEMU, West African Economic and Monetary Union, which Alassane Ouattara is the chairman. There is a threat at the level of the international market because France is facing difficulties right now. Why? The increase in prices and fuel is affecting the French economy. And for them to only get a balance is to devalue the CFA in their former colonies so that they can take a stand at that level. So when you see Macron coming down here, it's more of economic interest than this so-called transition, Anglophone crisis, sitting with Frundi and Cabral Libby. That one is to blindfold the ordinary Cameroonian. Is to deceive the Cameroonian who does not understand the nitty-gritty of this visit here. I'm going to tell you, the first time a French president stepped into this continent, in this country, in 1994, was when they came here to devalue the CFA. The CFA is about to experience another devaluation. Watch and see. And now they are printing new banknotes. We're not going to use the old notes. They are making these new notes very attractive and beautiful. It will be paper change and value less. And that's the reason why he has to visit Benin. He has to visit Guinea-Bissau. He has to visit Cameroon. Because this one has to do with currency devaluation. Mathieu Kirikou ruled Benin in the 80s. There is a particular amount of money, according to the 1958 treaties, that every former French colony has to pay. There was no money to pay from Benin that year. The president of France insisted that Benin had to pay that money under pressure. Benin had to call the AU chairman by then. The AU chairman said, well, how could they possibly put in Benin under such pressure when they know that they don't have money? It was when they told Mandela. Mandela now called the French president and said to him, my friend, are you people willing to squeeze water out of the rock? You will see an economy already sinking, and you are insisting that they should pay colonial dues. Where would the money come from? They said they will spare Benin this year. Let that year pass. But next year they should not fail. When you see them going around, know that the standard of living of people in France is dropping. And Africa is their toilet pot. Whenever they have eaten very well, they want to excrete, they come and excrete here. Remember that Africa is a shock absorber to French bullets. When France faces hike in foodstuff, hike in petrol, they dump it upon their African colonies. We are the ones who carry those burdens at the end by devaluing the money that does not have value anywhere in the world. Remember, every time the France CFA is devalued, France's position, because the benefit they get from it is their currency. It's not dollars, it's not euro, it's not pound sterling, it's not Japanese yen, it's France's money. So if they devalue CFA by 1 franc, know that the French money is increasing by 1 franc. 1 franc.
Thank you, Apostle Ambe. Thank you so much.
So this visit here, let me learn, Elvis. This visit here is not just a matter of telling me that they want to change president in Cameroon, they want to do Anglophone crisis. Let us watch and see.
Thank you, Apostle Ambe. We would have loved you to continue again and again, but unfortunately, it's true we started about 15 minutes later because of some difficulties. So next time we'll have to talk about that. Let me take messages from our viewers, just a few messages, and then we conclude our show. Greetings to you in the studio and all the very learned panelists in the studio. Cameroonians should not expect any positive thing from Macron and France. They are agents of manipulation, lies telling, and sell good whole rope. That's what they are in. That is what they are in Africa. Look at the franc CFA. Look at Sonora. Mr. Boh, can you imagine that since the creation of the oil refinery Sonora in Cameroon, it has never refined our own oil? It was done for France to enslave us and put us under poverty. Please tell Macron to leave us alone. We are now with China and Russia. Christian Tebong from Christian Tebong. Thank you. From Elijah, my intel tells me Guinea will soon take over the leadership of ECOWAS, and Macron wants to make sure he doesn't co-opt or accept any advances from Russia. That's coming in from another viewer. Good afternoon, dear panelists. Wonderful topic on the table. We are presenting issues to Macron as Wu in Cameroon. Nelson from Boya. Other messages are coming in very late. So many of them. Please, you have to wait till the end of the program to send in all the messages in my phone. There are so many of them, and quite unfortunately, we cannot read all of them. Ndiwum Emmanuel, your last word. We sort of will end the interview.
Let me quickly react to something that my senior man and the political analyst said here, Mr. Shuneh, which actually took my attention. I could not leave the studio without saying, you know, I fell in love when he mentioned the statement that France fooled us with democracy and it has practically failed. And that one goes contrary. I'm happy it's coming from him because it goes contrary to what the proponents of CPDM hold in Cameroon, that Mr. Biya shall be remembered as a man who brought democracy in Cameroon. Today, it is not Ndiwum saying it. I am happy that we still have honest people in the ranks of the CPDM like Mr. Shuneh, who can say it practically that it has failed. It has failed. So thank you very much. I know that with time constraint, we still had a lot of things to say. But the last word is to all African presidents. Ask yourself, shall your legacy go in or go down to the archives of Africa, or shall go down to the archives of the colonial masters that you are serving?
Shuneh, and I think you want your last
yes,
words.
My last words, I just want to react to what Mr. Ambe said. After that impeccable and splendid presentation from Mr. Ambe, I think we now understand that, let's use Cameroon context, that the political, economic, social, cultural problems in Cameroon, that the CPDM is not the cause, that Mr. Biya is not the cause of the suffering in Cameroon, that we have a common enemy, that the common enemy is France, the common enemy is the neo-colonial invisible hand that is stopping our leaders from being able to serve the people, and that we don't need to have Njangi houses, as Mr. Ndiwum earlier said, that we can all close all these other opposition parties and join the CPDM. Let's fight the common enemy, because the common enemy of this country is not Mr. Biya, that the common enemy of this country is not the CPDM, that the common enemy is the invisible hand that is stopping our leaders from being able to lead. And it is a common problem that all the French former colonies are facing.
Thank you, Sheikh. I didn't see your medal. Is it a medal?
It's a brooch.
Okay. Oh, it looks good. I didn't see it. I thought it was something. I thought it was the face of your political mentor. Dr. Ako, I want to thank you so much for coming to today's program. Thank you so much, sir.
Yeah, the pleasure is mine. It is a time to call for African reawakening. We need to think of Africa first. We need to talk of general interest than individual interest. For those who have looted the continent together with the colonial master for the past 100, 200 years, it is time for Africa to take the bull by the horns. We can make it, and we will make it better.
Apostle Ambe, I know you already concluded. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Elvis. It's always a joy to be here. The time is too short for us to dissect Macron as a mason to rebuild French broken walls in Africa.
But I think we tried our best. If we started 10 minutes late because of some issues, and we are ending 10 minutes later, it means that it's exactly 90 minutes, and it is the end of our program here. Thank you so much, Ewane, and our studio manager, for the wonderful job you're doing. The program was coordinated by Kum Luned and supervised by Brian Tambe. I want to thank my guests for always being there, and to all those who are in the 90 Minutes in Africa group for their ideas, even though you don't see them yet, they're sending lots of ideas. I am Boh Elvis, thanking you for watching. See you next week for another edition of the program 90 Minutes.